Hey guys, I'm Lily O'Reilly. This is Lily O'Reilly Reviews, and today we're going to be doing a massive change on my vermicomposter. So if you're not familiar with a vermicomposter, go back and watch like 3 or 4 videos I've done on it so far. Basically what this is an in-home worm farm. I use red wiggler worms that I stocked this with. Originally this was full of a mix of coconut coir, newspaper, and then I add in organic materials like scraps from my plants. However, over time, the worms do what they do. You know, they breed. I'm giving them a lot of food, and their colony size has increased to the point where I want to add another layer onto the vermicomposter. So, vermicomposter trays look like this. This particular one came with 4. However, I don't think we're at the point where I need 4 trays on here yet. Trays are very simple. They are plastic squares with lots and lots of tiny little holes in the bottom so that the worms are able to travel freely up and down between the different layers. So what we're going to do is we are actually going to move this entire vermicomposter to a new location because I don't have the headroom to fit another tray on here comfortably. Then I'm going to show you how I prepped this tray, and then we will get it all set up and I'll show you what's going on. First off though, I will bring you a little closer and show you what's currently going on inside my vermicomposter. Okay, so basic vermicomposter construction. These clear trays at the bottom are called ant traps. You can keep them full of water, and if an ant attempts to invade this incredibly food-rich resource, they can't make it through your moat, essentially, to get in. This nozzle releases leachate into this cup, which currently has a little bit of liquid in it because I've been feeding them very wet things like tomatoes and peaches because that's what I had around. This tray right here, the clear one, is used to keep the worms from here from getting down into this depression in this tray where the leachate collects and then comes out. This is the main body of the vermicomposter. It's where they live, it's where they breed, it's where they eat. Everything happens in here. This is a vented lid that allows airflow because worms do actually need to breathe. If you open the lid, you can see a couple worms hanging onto it. And I will show you what the inside looks like. So inside a healthy vermicomposter, it should look like rich black dirt. So when we open this up, that's what you see. That is piles upon piles of worm poo. Now, if I was doing this for planting reasons, I could actually go through and harvest out all of this really nutrient-rich poo and put it into my plants or my garden or whatever, but luckily I have really rich soil, so I'm currently just leaving it until the tray completely fills up. So, now I'm going to work on breaking this down and getting it ready to get set up. Next, I will show you how I'm preparing my next tray for the worms. Okay, so actually preparing the second tray is super easy. Worms are not high maintenance pets, roommates, whatever. Basically, all you have to do is give them a foundational bedding that they can use to move through to eat, and your second tray is totally good to go. So, I have a bucket. This is my all-purpose bucket. And, well, we don't really have recycling services around here. So if I want to do recycling, I have to take my giant bin of recyclables and take it out to a communal drop-off point. But I'm a little bit of a trash panda, so every now and again, I get a really good score. Somebody was throwing out just pounds of shredded paper, documents or something. I don't care. I'm not going to go through it. What I am going to do is I'm going to use it as bedding. Worms love newspaper, copy paper, brown paper bags, egg cartons, cardboard. Anything like that is the perfect bedding for them. You can also use coconut coir if you want something more natural, That's what I did for the first layer, but for this layer, all the paper all the way. So let me shovel this full, and then we'll hit step 2. So now we have one bucket very full of assorted paper shreds. It does look like they occasionally shredded a business envelope, so I've been going through and picking out any plastic bits, but to be honest with the worms, I'm not super worried because it's not going to hurt them. They're just going to eat around it. And honestly, it was free. So, step 2 is you take your bucket and you spray it down with just generic tap water. I'm going to add a couple drops of dechlorinator in because I like to be incredibly careful, but honestly, I've spritzed the worms down with tap water before and I haven't noticed any ill effects, so should be okay. We're not looking to get it soaking wet, we just want it comfortably damp. They have their moisture exchange through their skin, so if we get them too dry, it's not great for them. So, let's get this wet and then we'll move on. There we go. I gave everything a nice spray down. It is vaguely paper mache-ish. So, step 2 is now officially done-ish. I'm not going to put this into the tray until I have it on top of my vermicomposter in the new location, because you want to be absolutely sure you're getting good contact between your food tray and your home tray so that they can travel through. So I'm going to move things and then we're going to go from there. Okay, so the new home for my vermicomposter. Things are messy because I'm in the middle of a DIY right now, but I have a very large in-home humidifier that's rated for about 50 to 75 pounds on top. It rolls, but not much, and it's going to be backed up against a wall, so it's a stable place to put them. I've measured the top 4 times, and I'm fairly certain it'll fit, so let's find out. Okay, so vermicomposter is in its new position. I'm gonna go get the second tray, then we'll pop the lid off and show you what's inside and put the next tray on. Very carefully flip it upside down because there are worms that like to hang out in the lid, and set it off to one side. Now if you come closer, this is the inside of a healthy vermicomposter. You can see here, this is all very, very healthy worm poo. It's dark, it's soft, it's crumbly. You can see some worms that are out meandering around. I am going to disturb it a little bit because I want to see how deep the worm poo goes. And currently it looks like the majority of this bedding is worms and worm poo. If you go a little further, I've run into some eggshells that were crushed up. What I'm trying to find is I put a peach in here last week. An entire peach, because you know how they go bruised and then they go bad? Here's all that's left of it. One peach pit out of an entire peach, completely devoured in about a week and a half. So that's one. Put everybody back in that hole. So I've been having a lot of leachate because I've been putting in a lot of fruit, which is not a bad thing at all. It's a perfectly healthy thing for them to eat. And if y'all would be so kind as to remove yourselves from my peach pit, thank you. Little baby worms are the cutest thing because they're so small. Come on, focus in. There we go. They're so small. But once I get them off of it, that was my second peach that they completely eaten. Let's put all of that back. If I remember right, there was at least one more peach. Generally, you can find where the food is because it's where the large concentration of worms are. And digging around like this doesn't hurt them in the least if you're gentle with how you move them. Third peach pit. There might be one more. I don't remember. There might have been a tomato over here instead. Nope, there was another peach because there's the pit. So in a week and a half maybe, they've eaten 4 whole peaches. And if you listen, you might not be able to hear it because I don't have my pro mic. But you can actually hear the worms moving in the soil. It's incredibly gratifying to be able to feed them with your kitchen scraps and have such a lively, healthy community of worms. And no, before you're asking, they don't have any kind of smell. I can literally put my face all the way down to the bedding, and all you smell is a very, very soft, wet earth kind of scent. Honestly, 98% of the time, unless I'm feeding them, I don't really think about the fact that I have them in my kitchen. But they are such an amazing way to get rid of leftover food waste. So now we're going to put on the second tray. I'm going to scoot you back a little bit. So the second tray goes on. And you push it down just a little. You don't want to compact them, but you do want there to be contact enough that they can get up and through. So now you can see into the second tray, which is not exactly touching the soil, but it's close. So we're going to take this tray and fill it with wet paper. And this is literally just to give them somewhere to eat. I'm taking the glove off now that I'm not touching poo. That's the only thing. Although I know technically it's probably clean, I still don't enjoy touching worm poo. Now, because I did not create this paper, this is a great opportunity for me to go through and make sure there's no plastic, no credit card, no nothing that I need to worry about. And you just pack it in by the wet handfuls. Some of it is still a little bit dry, but that's okay. I'm going to go through and spritz it down with a sprayer afterwards. And I'm also not going to fill this all the way up to the top. Worms, as they look for food, will naturally rise upward. So all you need to do is give them enough of a layer for them to feel safe, and they will travel up into this layer to eat. Very simple. Aha, I keep hearing little rustles of plastic. Guys, I realize that I am a grade A hypocrite, because despite knowing deep down that a little bit of plastic would not hurt the worms, I have still spent the past 20 minutes painstakingly picking out every shard of plastic I could find, which had the lovely side effect of making sure that all of the paper is very moist. So now that I'm done being a fussy mama over my little worm babies, we are going to feed them. Now, with something like this, it's best to not completely choke the top layer with food. However, I'm still going to be putting in a fairly sizable amount because I have a fairly large worm colony and I want to encourage them to come up. I store my food, so I actually have a bullet blender, and I will move this up, take my food scraps, throw them in the bullet blender, blend them up into like a puree, and throw them into jars, which I then put in my fridge or my freezer because giving them their food in liquid form makes it a lot easier for them to eat, and it means that you're going to get more worms faster. So, I'm going to start off with one very moldy tomato that's just kind of been hanging out. Now what I do is I don't want to put it directly on the bottom, but I also don't want to leave it open to the elements or the fruit flies will get it. So, you just kind of plant your tomato or whatever food you're putting in, and you put enough paper on top of it to dissuade things from trying to get in and lay babies in it. And I'm just going to kind of do the rest in a thin layer around the tray. I have, a god-awful mix. I think there's a duckweed from one of my aquariums. This is some beet skins, as in like, red beets that you boil and then eat. There are tea leaves. There's a little bit of everything. This is going to be a massive amount of food for them to come up and work through. And then you just very lightly cover it all with newspaper. We're going to do the same thing over here. Light layer of paper on the bottom. Shake out your food, which generally just kind of turns into a slimy paste. It's whatever. You get used to it. I wear gloves because of this. Now, I do know people who put their food in whole, and that's a perfectly viable way to do things. It will just take them longer to eat it because they have very, very small mouths. So, final corner. Scrape it down so that there's just a little bit of paper between it and the bottom. And then I realized my hand's too small. I'm going to get a spoon. I actually have a spoon that I keep for this very reason, because I use jars that I can't reach into. And that finishes out this jar. Now, the food that I mix up for them is literally just whatever foods are getting ready to spoil, or whatever is, scraps. So there will be things like eggshells, carrot peels. I've done watermelon when I've had that in the fridge and it's going bad. A little bit of everything. Do not give them meat, fat, dairy, because they have trouble with those. I have heard that you should avoid large amounts of citrus, because apparently large amounts of citrus can basically burn their fragile little skin, and I think that's heartbreaking. And overall, that is the second layer of my vermicomposter. It's not very thick. It's only about yay deep right now, because I don't want this to fill up too quickly. So I'm giving them just enough bedding to run around in and a lot of food to eat. And as they eat, they're going to poop, and as they poop, that builds the base layer of substrate, essentially, so that over time this will fill up. Now, when it gets like full, that's the point when I start looking into removing the bottom layer and putting a new layer on top. Or I could just stack a third tray if I'm continuing to put out this much kitchen waste. Because the more trays you have on the vermicomposter, the more room they have to form a larger colony. So you have options. If you don't produce a lot of kitchen waste, you could keep it at 1 tray. If you're like me and you're, cooking a ton because you're at home because of COVID, you can absolutely put a 2nd tray on, get a larger colony so that your entire freezer doesn't get taken up by jars of worm food instead of jars of people food. So, there we go. 2nd layer's all put up. So now that everything is put together and done, all I have to do is take my lovely lid and pop it on. It's got a little lip, so I give it a wiggle to make sure it's seated. Scoot my vermicomposter back against the wall where I meant for it to go. And we're good. Alright guys, so it's been a full 24 hours later, and I figured we would go ahead and give a quick peek into the vermicomposter so that you can see how the worms are settling in. So I'm just going to pull you in real fast and let you see what's going on when I pop the lid. Okay, so let's see how they like their new setup. As you can see, there are worms everywhere inside the newspaper. The newspaper is still fairly moist. There's a faint smell of foodstuffs, but that's just because there's such a light layer of newspaper over the top. And overall, they seem to be happy, healthy, and busy eating. So it looks like we did okay with adding the 2nd layer. And as always, if you would like to catch me anywhere else that I exist online, that is allmylinks.com/Lily O'Reilly. Those do include both Safe for Work and NSFW links, just so you know. If you want to toss me $3 or more to help fund things like my vermicomposter, that's all at ko-fi.com/Lily O'Reilly. Overall, I'm just glad you're here, and I really hope this was helpful. So till next time, bye guys.